All right, folks. So, apologies for the difficulties, but hey, we're rolling now. We should be recording, so regardless of audio issues, it should at least get recorded so we can watch it after the fact. So thank you all again for joining us, and thank you, Mr. Tolbert, for sharing your time. I'm going to kick it off, and then we will proceed with the presentation. So today we are talking about leadership. What does it really look like to be a leader? Mr. Tolbert is an established business leader and elected official in Birdville. So I am greatly looking forward to hearing what his presentation and hearing what he has to say. We will do a Q&A session towards the end, so feel free to put those questions in the chat and I will kind of moderate it. Chris will be manning the slideshow, and it's going to be a collaborative effort, but you can bet it's gonna be great. So Mr. Tolbert, thank you again for joining us, and I would love to allow you to kick it off. I'm gonna tell Chris I'm going off script right now, so I'm just gonna tell him to go to the next slide. I hope that's all right. All right, Mr. Tolbert, sorry for the back and forth here, but I think we should just get it going. So Mr. Tolbert, what is your tell us about being a leader. Tell us about your leadership experience, or whatever it is, in fact, whatever knowledge you have to share with us today.
Thank you, Jacob. And yeah, sorry for the kind of rocky start this morning, everyone, but it's good to be with you. It's a Friday, and I appreciate you guys having on here, Jacob and Chris. I appreciate you asking me to do this. I wanted to take some time today, and at some point, Jacob or Chris, if y'all would put in the chat box when I need to close this down. I know now it's about 10:20, so somebody let me know how much time I have after this. I've got a PowerPoint presentation today to show you. Look, leadership. One of the main things I think about leadership is that it's your style. It's what you make of it. You need to learn from what others have done, but at the same time, don't forget it's about you. Everybody has their own style, and that's the best leader is going to be the best you that you can be. And so while you can learn from others, your path is not going to be the same as mine. It's not going to be the same path as the people around you. But I've got a PowerPoint, and I'd like to start that, and we can start going down that road.
Wonderful. I will indicate to Chris to reshare the screen. I know we had it up in a second. Oh, there we go. Perfect.
So how does it look, Jacob?
Perfect. I can see it.
Okay. The first thing is I want to talk a little bit about leadership journey, mine and yours. And then I want to talk about some key points that I think every leader should know. And if we have a little time at the end, I'd also like to talk about some of the different styles. I had a video in the middle, but due to lack of time, I may have to skip through that. Let me tell you about my leadership journey. And again, this is mine, may not be exactly yours. I had set a goal as a young child of graduating from college. My parents had a lot of kids and not much money. So my parents were not able to help me pay for college. I had to do that myself. Similar to my father, actually my father's brother came back from World War II and took my father to A&M. Dropped him off with 2 suitcases and pointed the way to where you got admitted. And that wasn't far from mine. My parents at least helped me get moved in. But I paid for everything myself. I worked at Burger King. During the summers, I would come home and mow lawns. As I got to be a little older in school, I graded papers in freshman classes. And also I had a friend on the track team who got me some jobs that the athletes were. I'm not an athlete, but some of the jobs that some of the athletes had, I got to work with them during Christmas and spring break and other times. I was able to get electrical engineering undergrad and worked in that area for 3 years. I saved money during that time. Also, something you may not know, a lot of companies, in fact, the company I work for actually help pay for master's degree courses. And I took those. I didn't get my master's degree, but I got about 2/3 of the way through, but then decided I really wanted to go to law school and ended up working summers to help pay for law school. It's really not practical to work and go to law school because it's pretty much it took me about days. I would take Sunday afternoons off from about noon to 6, but that was about all I had time to not be studying or reading during that time. So it's all encompassing and not really an opportunity during the school year to work. So I work summers. One thing I want you to take away from this presentation is meet people. Get out, even if it's not your comfort zone. Some people love to meet people. Some people they would rather just stay home. But if you can make yourself get out and meet people, you'll be surprised the things that will happen and the connections you'll make. For example, I never had much thought about going into politics, but when working on a campaign, I met who's now the current mayor of North Richland Hills, Oscar Trevino. We became friends. Oscar asked me to be on planning and zoning in North Richland Hills. I did that for a couple of years. And then when the seat came open, I ran and was on North Richland Hills City Council for 4 years. And then when a seat came open on school board, I ran for school board and actually been doing that for over 16 years. So it's amazing things that will happen to you when you just get out and meet people. Okay, here's a technique that was a game changer for me. Again, you're gonna have to find what works for you, but there was a lady in HR department of my electrical engineering company that taught me this, and it really helped me a lot. And that is, it doesn't take a lot of time, but sometime in your room or some kind of quiet space, spend about 5 to 10 minutes in quiet. You don't have to have your eyes closed, but what I want you to do is to sit in quiet without anybody else around at some point and picture basically your dream job. Now, when I say that, be reasonable. You know, at one point in my life, I wanted to be a professional football player. Of course, that was never going to happen for me. And so when I say be reasonable, think of, don't limit yourself, but on the flip side, realize that, you know, professional athletes, probably not in most of our future. So, but think about where you are on your, and let your mind go and think about where it is that you would love to spend your time during the day. And once you get to that place, I want you to write down on a piece of paper after you think about it, how were you dressed? Were you in jeans? Did you have on a suit? You know, were you in scrubs in a hospital? How were you dressed as you were thinking about this? Also, were you outside? Were you working with your hands when you were doing it? Were you in an office? Were you in a cubicle? Were you in a corner office with windows looking out over the city? All those things are important. And also, are you working with a team, or are you working alone? Are you leading a group? Are you speaking in front of a group of people? That should all come as you think about, okay, this is where I see myself, and I like that. And then take a moment to write all that down. What did you see when you went through that step? Then once you've written all that down, talk to some family and friends, or if you have a mentor or somebody at school, and take some time and say, look, I have these traits of where I'd like to be. these are certain things that would be great for my dream job. And then start fitting that in to jobs that you see around you. And at this point, be observant. When you walk into a store to buy something, I know we mostly do stuff online now, but if you go into a store to buy something, look around. Do you see yourself helping customers that come in the door? Do you see yourself being the manager of that store? When you go in a bank, do you see yourself being a teller? Do you see yourself being one of the bank lending officers? Same at school. As you look around, do you see yourself maybe being one of the teachers, a nurse, or maybe in administration? Even when you go to the doctor's office, would you like to be working at the receptionist desk? Would you want to be one of the nurses helping the patients, or would you prefer to be a doctor who's providing the medical care? Auto shops, fire department, all those things. When you go by or when you go in those, don't just stay on your phone the whole time. Look around and see, does this fit what I was thinking about? Does this fit my dream job? It's inside, or it's outdoors, or I'm working with a team of people, or I'm able to be alone. All those things you need to look for, and that will help you on that. You also have a lot of tools that I didn't have at your age. You can go online and you can take free personality tests. Just one that I came up with a quick Google search. You can look around and you can see, yeah, I can take this personality test. They ask you, do you want to be reading a book? Do you want to be outside? It asks you all those things. And then at the end, it lists all the jobs that fit the profile of things that you want to be doing. And if you aspire to a political position, one of the greatest things you can do is read and learn about what successful politicians have done in their life, and you can maybe learn their path. Step 3, so step 1, as you recall, is be in a quiet place and write down all those things you see as your dream job. Step 2 is to look around and observe. What are jobs that I see in my life that fit some of those criteria that I set down. The next thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to figure out what kind of training you need. Are you going to need some vocational training? If you want to go into auto tech, do you need some place to go to vocational school where they train you to work? Do you want to get a college degree? Some people do, some people don't. All paths are fine. Do you maybe want to do apprenticeship? Maybe there's a plumber that perhaps you would want to work with, or an electrician you'd want to work with, and be an apprentice for a while as you learn. Same for if you're interested in political positions. What I suggest, again, as I stated a little earlier, is to read bios of those people that you admire. With the internet, it's simple now. If you admire some politician, pull it up and read about their background. Yes, there's some people that, as they say, have a silver spoon in their mouth. They had everything from the beginning, but you'll be surprised how many people are not like that. They actually worked hard and they got to where they are based on hard work, and that's why they succeeded. Step 4 is to start being a leader now. And by the way, leaders are everywhere. Leaders aren't just school board members, or not just members of the legislature or Congress or president. Leaders, you'll find them in your classroom. You'll find them with teachers. You'll find them on about every organization that you're a part of. You'll see leaders. And so now is a time for you to start being a leader. And you can do that in clubs at school, sports teams, student government, like student council, if you're in band, choir, theater, clubs. All those organizations need leaders. And I'm not saying that you have to be the president of student council to be a leader, or you have to be the drum major of band, or the star quarterback for the football team. There's leadership roles on those teams, and the leader, the teachers that lead those organizations, or the coaches or the directors that lead those organizations, that they need leaders in those. So take initiative and responsibility and start learning how to do that in law school, not in law school, in high school. As I said, volunteer. go up to the coach, go up to the band director, go up to the teacher and say, look, I'm interested in this and I would like to start learning different ways of being a leader. And challenge yourself, because every time you have an experience, and I'm a big believer in this, every time you have an experience, you will find that you will learn something from that experience, and you'll start growing, and you'll be able to use those experiences the next time something comes up in a bigger role. And finally, step 5 is just bring this all together. You've envisioned it, you've gone out and found the type of jobs that you wanted. You've then started doing some things in high school to show that you're a leader and to learn how to be a leader. And then after high school, apply for the job that you want. Go out and get the training. And like I said, don't take no for an answer. If money's a problem, hard work and jobs late or early or available. I'm not saying getting to the top or where you want to be is easy. In fact, it's rarely easy. You have to work for it. So go out and get the training however you can do it. And again, I keep saying this, meet people. You will find that as you meet people in your life, they will open doors that would not have been open to you if you hadn't taken the time to try to get to meet them. And then really, through all this, there's no shortcut to this last thing, and that is show up and work hard. Some people will say when something doesn't work out for them, you will find people in your life that will say, well, they were just lucky. And while I admit there have been people in my life that I considered, quote, lucky, 95% of the time it's not luck. The people showed up, they worked hard, and the boss or whoever the leader was at the time had confidence that they knew they could give them this position or they could give them this raise, and that made all the difference because the person showed up, worked hard, and it happened. So again, you can just brush it off as, well, they were just lucky, but that's normally not the way it is. Like I said, 95% of the time, it's the person that showed up and worked hard is going to get the benefits and the rewards of that working hard. I don't know what I'm doing on time. Somebody help me out here on whether I just need to move on or.
You're doing great, Mr. Tolbert. I think if we leave 15 or 20 minutes for questions, that would be great. I do have some questions that I've written down. And I don't want to, but I'll be mindful of the chat and let students ask questions, or Todd or Mr. Gerard.
How much more time do I have before I get to that 20-minute mark?
You have about 2 to 4 minutes.
Okay, then we'll skip through the video. Sorry about that. Some of them were kind of funny. I do want to hit a couple of quick points that I have time. This is a big one for me, and it's called the 20-60-20 rule. The 20-60-20 rule, and what that is in any organization, every business, every church, every school. This always turns out to be true. 20% of the people are super positive, and they're going to follow your lead, and they're going to do everything they can for you, and that's where you're going to get most of your workers, those 20%. Then on the far other side, you're going to have 20% of the people that are negative. And I'm sorry, but there's nothing you can do. They're just going to gripe, they're going to complain, and you kind of got to, sorry, but you can't spend your time on those 20% because you're never going to convince them. They're negative at the world has it out for them, and I can't do much for those people. But as a leader, you've already got the 20% positive. You're never going to get the 20% negative. Your time has got to be spent on the 60% potential. Because if you can get to 60% potential, that's your workforce. Those are your soldiers, if you will. They'll go out there and they'll do your work. You got your leaders in the 20% positive, and you got your workers in the 60% potential. Don't spend all your time on the 20% negative, because the 20% negative are very, very loud and obnoxious. And if you spend your time on them, you're going to forget about 80% and you're going to fail. So remember when you hear the negative, is that just part of the 20%? Then I'm just going to kind of deal with it, but I'm going to block it out, because my focus has to be on that 60% potential. The next thing is what I see a lot is somebody makes a mistake and they crumble and they're like, I'm not good enough. I shouldn't have been here. And self-doubt sets in and they can't do it anymore. Don't do it. This is a little example of somebody who's hit 5 nails the wrong way. They finally do it the right way. And that's what mistakes are all about. You're going to do things wrong, and do not get down on yourself. It's a learning opportunity for you, and that is going to make you a better leader. And as you go forward, I don't know any leader I have ever read about that didn't make colossal mistakes along with small mistakes. But the difference between one that's successful and one's not is they learned from it and they never made that mistake again because they realized it and they went on. So with that, Jacob, I'll turn it over to question and answers.
Perfect. That was a wonderful presentation. I greatly appreciate it, and I think we've left a good amount of time for questions. As always, folks, if you would like to ask questions, feel free to do so. I don't know if the students have direct access to type in, but maybe if Todd or Chancellor Gerard want to raise their hand, I can always come to them. But to kick it off, I do have some questions that I've jotted down that I think would be great to expand on. So you talked about leadership. You talk a lot of, you talk about leadership and, the need to take that on. And I would argue it's a choice that has to be made. But you started by talking about meeting people, how meeting people can open those doors. Something that Chris and I have said time and time again. Sorry, I'm just reading this thing on the chat. But it bears repeating. But there's something that I thought of that you obviously got to, but I'd like to ask you if you want to expand on it a little bit. Tell us about the virtue of confidence. So some people maybe have a hard time visualizing themselves as worthy of being leaders. How can people identify their strengths that might lead to the confidence to be a leader? I think it's a lot easier to just bow out and be like, that's not me. How do we get past that?
Yeah, Jacob, that's tough. Look, I'm a lot older than everybody in this room, and and I know it was hard for me when I would look at my parents, or I would say, oh, they had it all together, or all this kind of. And what I didn't realize is they didn't always have it together, and that they really had struggles. And I'll just tell you right now, I grew up in a lot of poverty. I had a great family. I'm not complaining, but I had a lot of poverty. I didn't have a lot. My first experience when I went to a school first, a little small school first, and a lot of people had a lot of money there, and it shook my confidence a lot because I'll just be honest with you, they were all about money. Who had the best clothes, who had the best car, and I couldn't afford any of those. Like I said, I was working at Burger King serving them, burgers at midnight when they were going through. So. What at some point though you have to say is, did life just deal me a bad hand, or do I have the opportunity to go out and make it a different life than that? And by the way, I'm not saying I had a bad life. I'm just saying I didn't have much money. And so there's a difference. You could be happy and not have money, and have money and be happy. But I just made a decision, and I switched schools. By the way, I switched schools and loved my second school. The people I was all around were very upbeat and a lot like me. Just, hey, I'm out here hardworking. So to get back to your question is, yes, people can tell you, and they love to tell you that you're not worthy of this. And one example that I sometimes give other people is I do mainly construction law, is mainly what I do. I'm not going to say the name, but there was a very well-known golfer at the time who was on the PGA Tour, and he had trouble with his house. And so I got in the middle of that. And let me just tell you, it was a house that we would all just see on movies and dream of ever living in. But I remember the wife at one point kind of mentioning that this other golfer had a bigger house and a nicer house. And it struck me so much. I was like, you've got everything that nearly everybody in their life dreams of. And yet you're thinking about another golfer has a bigger house and something like that. So all that to say is stop comparing yourself to other people. Find your path and your happiness, and do not, because I've had a jillion people tell me I can't do it. You can do it. And it doesn't matter where you come from. It really doesn't. Now, people try to tell you it does, and they give you 1,000 excuses. And you can take those excuses and you can say, well, that person was just lucky, or they have money, or they have this. I'm sorry. I've got too many experiences in my life where people that had nothing and didn't even know the English language when they got here have come out and have been super successful. There was a young man from Haltom High School I think it was about 12 years ago, and he told his story of coming over here they came over from Vietnam after, I think he was in first or second grade, no English, none. And he's now a medical doctor in Dallas and is doing great. Now, a lot of people probably told him, you don't look right, you don't speak the language. You're not the type that should succeed. And guess what? He did. Just don't listen to those other voices.
I'm muted. Sorry. Yeah, don't listen to them. Okay, so that's a great question, and that's a great response, and we have a lot of questions flooding in, so I'm going to focus on those rather than what I wrote down. And I think you answered one of them, but I'll raise it in case you want to expand on it. The secret to positivity when everything around you is negative. And I think young people today, I don't want to speak for young people, but I think we're burdened in a way by it's the idea of being a try hard. It's like don't put in the effort. It's not worth it. That kind of thing. And there's another question. When you were in high school, did you ever feel burned out? How did you battle that? Maybe that relates. It's like there's so much negativity. It's hard to fight the good fight. Are there any strategies or ways to get through that?
Okay, so on the negativity, look, through COVID was actually a time being on school board. There was no right answer. If you put a mask on a child, then half of the parents thought you were terrible. And if you said, no, we're not going to put a mask on the child, and the other half thought you were trying to kill all the children. And that was a time where I got emails and I hate to say this, but I got some of the harshest emails I got were actually from some of our teachers. I didn't blame them. I knew they were in difficult situations. But there was a lot of negativity that hit. And I think that you have to go to that place in your heart. Am I doing what's right? And you have to find that. And look, there's been times I've been wrong. And one of the things that I am a big believer in is I'm going to make decisions based on the facts I have today. And if I'm going to look at the facts I have today, I'm going to make a decision. I'm not going to just sit and go, well, I don't know everything, because that's not how wars are won. That's not how life is won. This is what I have. I'm going to go forward. If some point those facts change, I'm going to go with, I'm going to change my decision at that point and move in a different direction. But I think that you've got to know in your heart of heart, and that's why I go back to the idea of you need to envision either where you are, or you need to envision where you want to be. And that's the right path for you. Once you find that, you'll know if you have some silly idea that you're going to be again, I hate to keep using this, but if you're going to be a professional football player, you're not. So don't. So think of what's realistic and make that happen. And look, I've seen that in my life let me back around to this. This is the number one thing. Sorry, I should have thought of this earlier. The number one thing to fight the negativity is to surround yourself with people that aren't negative. Don't get around people that negative at work. Don't get around people that negative in your life. Don't do it. find people that are positive, and then you go to them when things are bad and you're like, hey, what do I need to do? And they're like, yeah, I know this really stinks right now, but we're going to get there together and we're going to make this. I should have actually made that one of my points, because having negative people, let me tell you, how you're going to get fired at a job is to hang around people that are complaining. You're going to get fired. Bye. You're going to be that negative 20. Bye. So find the people that are positive, even if you're not. Find those people who are positive and surround yourself, and that will insulate you during the depths. They'll help you pull you up, and then when they go down, you're going to be able to pull them up. You don't get around people that just want to complain about everything, because there's a lot of people on social media now that all they want to do is complain.
Yeah, it's the new American pastime. Okay, so we've got about 9 minutes left. A handful of questions talked about the 20-60-20, and I think there's probably more we can tease out here, though a lot of it could be extrapolated from what you've said. Have you ever seen a time where you could make a bottom 20 character into a 60, or even the positive 8, the positive 20?
Yes, and super question. And I'm sorry if that came across. Look, that 20-60-20 is a generalization. That doesn't mean that those 20% are always going to be there, or the 20% are going to be here. But for about every organization, a lot of times they call it the 20-80. And that's because if you ever go to any organization, you'll find those 20% are leading it, and the rest are just kept following it. Great question about the bottom 20%. And that's a whole nother talk about the bottom 20%. My main philosophy is, don't lead based on the negativity from the bottom 20%, because then you're going to lose focus on what you need, and that is the 60%. However, you can, without losing focus, you can reach down to that negative 20%, and you can have programs in place, and you can put things in place to bring them along. You're going to get some of them you're never going to get. But yes, there are ways to go in and work with those 20%. The point, since I was just doing a quick point, was I think most of your time, let's keep on this target, is 80% of your time needs to be with that 60 and that 20%. I also don't think you should lead based on just the negativity of those bottom 20%. So I think those are two important things. Don't lose sight of that. However, in answer to the question, yes, I think you can bring up some of those 20%. And the people that you're going to bring along kind of goes back to a point I had a little earlier. Sometimes good people get around negative people, and they say, "Oh, wasn't he mean? Wasn't she mean? They're not treating us right." And all of a sudden you go, "Yeah, you're right. They're not treating us right. This is really lousy how they're treating me." And you get all these people pouring into their ears all this negativity, and they go home and they're like, "Yeah, they're being really mean to me at work." And if you can ferret out those that are just happen to be around a lot of negative people, and you can somehow get them to find out that there's more life out there to be had, to be positive, and get some people in their ear that are telling them, you can bring them into your 60 and even your 20% possibly. They just happen to be. Look, there's been times in my life where I've gotten around some people that just want to gripe, and I guess what? I end up kind of griping too. And you got to catch yourself and go, wait, it's not going to help. Here's a tip for you in life. If you're just going to sit around and complain about your job all the time, quit. It's not helping you. It's not helping them. Move on. And so if you're finding somebody that all they want to do is complain, just I need to move on to some different friends.
Yeah, and that's something I wrote down. To the young people in the audience, don't be the 20%. We're telling you now, you've been warned, so you can't plead ignorance anymore. Don't be that 20%, because you will get left behind. That's my hot take.
Yeah.
So I think I want to combine two questions now, and I think this is probably will be our last one. Um, so we have a question from Chancellor Gerard about your pathway into political life. And I would like to couple that with a previous question about, as a younger person, was there a moment where you decided that you wanted to take on being a community leader? Was that a gradual thing, or was it like a conscious decision? Maybe you can talk about your desire to be a leader in general, or when you decided to get into political life. You can take it whichever direction you'd like.
Yeah. Okay. So again, the city asked for volunteers. This is going to sound so boring to everybody in the room, and I'm sorry, but this is the way it is. They asked for community members to come out to see if they wanted to be on a panel to talk about land usage. Sorry, whether a McDonald's should be there or a church should be there or whatever. I know that sounds boring. I get it. But for some reason, I was taking my message to heart, and that is to get out and meet people. And I didn't know a lot of people in the community. I thought this would be a good way to meet people. I didn't sound great to be on a land usage committee. I was selected for that, and then worked hard. And the mayor at the time saw me and a couple others, and he was impressed that we showed up for all the meetings and worked hard at what we were doing. And he came and he mentored us. He said, "This is how you run a campaign. This is how you do that." I ran. I lost. I lost the campaign he helped me with, but he showed me all the ins and outs of it. And I loved knocking doors. I loved answering questions. I found myself liking to be kind of just talking to people. And then, like I said, then a new mayor came in who knew me, and he put me on planning and zoning. And then later ran for city council. But it was being out there during the campaign. There were some negative things, kind of rough times during the campaign. Campaigns are not always fun at all, and there's some nasty stories in the background nobody will ever know or need to know. But on the flip side, I like being out there and meeting people, and I like the doors that it was opening for me. And all of a sudden, it was. Okay, so again, this is not gonna. Y'all are gonna think this is really weird. I'm sorry, but we opened. There was an old house at an intersection. The lady sold her property to Home Depot, and so Home Depot was going to come in. The surrounding neighborhood was going crazy. It's like, we don't want a Home Depot. That's going to be traffic. And we worked really hard at putting boundaries around, making sure that the Home Depot lights only shone down, the outside lights only shone down. It wouldn't shine out to the. We put a barrier around that was a green space that protected the neighborhood from the Home Depot. And even today, I shop at that same Home Depot, and I look at the things that we did to make it better. Nobody else cares about that. They really don't. But that was kind of one of those moments when Home Depot opened, and I looked and I was like, that was an intersection at a 6-lane and a 6-lane intersection. That was going to be a Home Depot. It wasn't going to be houses. That's silly. And it's a huge Home Depot at this point in North Richland Hills. I was a part of that, and that made me happy to see that we were able to accommodate the needs of the neighborhood, and also that a business was going to go on this busy intersection.
Yeah, and I mean that's an example of being a leader, not only in taking on that challenge, but also doing everything you can to be a good leader by helping the people that you serve. You don't have to choose between a retail business and a nice livable neighborhood. You can have both.
Right.
And that's what a leader needs to do. And I think that's a good example of how a leader ought to be. And a leader ought to make those sacrifices and knock on those doors and spend. It's like, if somebody's going to have a headache about it, at least let the leader do it, because they asked for the challenge. And I think, and it's 11, we are out of time, but I think I want to lead with that. This is something that I say all the time. I was judging a DECA competition last week, and I was trying to give some advice. I'm gonna reply to Chris real quick. Y'all are going to have to get used to being challenged, because if you're not going to move forward. Being a leader is challenging. Going out of your way to meet people and to build confidence is challenging. And if you don't do it, I mean, you are going to get left behind. And TILBM is not about that. We are trying to make sure that you achieve your full potential. And Mr. Tolbert has given you some great advice. At no point did he say it was easy, but he did say it was possible. It can be done, and you owe it to yourself to take his advice. So we do need to end it. So I'm going to tell Chris to end the recording in the Zoom. But Mr. Tolbert, thank you again. You've been amazing. Very much appreciated. And I'm sure that everybody in class is applauding you right now. So thank you again. I'll tell Chris to end it, but meeting adjourned.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tolbert.
Yeah, I'm gonna log off.